Hello and welcome to the QA Therapy podcast. Are you looking to improve your overall testing and quality practices? My name is Sergio Freire and I'm solution architect and testing advocate at Xray. How would you define TDD to them and the benefits of the TDD?
I like to define it as it's first of all a design tool. So it helps us to create software with a better design, and we do that by guiding our design with tests. So we write a little test, and then we make it fail, and then we add just enough production code to get it passing, and then we continue. And so as a side effect, well, we have a automated test suite that can then serve as a regression test. So the benefit is really that it creates testable code.
Sometimes we confuse as TDD to be a testing practice, and it's really not. It's a design practice that, well, use tests to do so. But I have a second question and follow up, and within the context of what we are talking here, that we're going to touch a little bit on TDD, and we want to connect it to exploratory testing. So how do you define exploratory testing on your own words?
Right. So I'm not an expert in exploratory testing, so I've only have my information from testers that I am in contact with. So my idea of exploratory testing is about exploring a system to find the things we might not have thought about, or ways of using that we haven't thought about. Like it's finding the unknowns, where test-driven development is checking the things we know, or the assumptions we are making. But this is really a too simplistic explanation of exploratory testing, because, well, it's like a combination of discovering and learning, and based on that taking new decisions, and well, going further. And from what I've read, it's good to take notes. Like you discover something, but you don't want to go immediately into it, but you don't want to forget it, and so then you start taking notes, which is kind of similar with TDD, where we do something similar.
I think we all came across many teams adopting unit tests, and what unit test means is like a whole level of discussion. But for teams that are just adopting unit tests, making unit tests, what's the additional value of taking a step further and start doing TDD?
It's the testability part. It's being able to actually test the system with automated tests. So I can, when I look at code that I haven't worked on myself, I can immediately identify if this has been written the TDD way, or where test has been written afterwards. It's really a style of designing, when you do TDD.
Oh, that's very interesting. You can notice right away by
Yeah,
looking at the code.
yeah. It's well, the classic pitfall of people writing tests afterwards is that they instantiate objects in the middle of methods, instead of parsing the things the code depend on as arguments. That's a classic example, and it makes it way more difficult to test.
Yeah, and by what you are describing, it seems like it's a change of approach on how you are developing or how you are uh, defining what you want to put into production. So in this approach, the tests are written first. That sometimes can seem a little bit counterintuitive for teams. How do you convince a team to start the development with tests. That is sometimes a really big change on what they are used to do.
Well, from my experience, actually, the convincing part doesn't really work. It only works when you sit next to the people and show them, like, this is how it works. And then they start to have an aha moment. Like, it's like that. And it's not that difficult, actually. But it also took, well, to be fair, it took myself quite a long way to have that aha moment and to understand how it actually worked. So I had to read the book TDD by example from Ken Beck to then finally get it.
And the change is hard, Thierry. Do you, for anyone that is used to do it like in the traditional way, non-TDD way, let's say, making that change, is it something that people see as hard and or or it's not
Well,
like.
the difficult part is to start thinking in small increments. Many are used to do loads of changes at once and then start testing. Where now you are doing the other way around. You are going to do a little change. Well, you are going to write a little test and then add a little change. And then you get it passing. And sometimes to get it passing is actually implementing the most obvious thing where everyone would scream like, yeah, but that's not how we are going to release production code. Yeah, well, look, it passes. And now we are going to add an additional test that will force us to generalize the code. And so you move on, where people have the tendency to start generalizing right away without having enough examples to do the correct generalization. And this is where bugs start. And wrong assumptions.
Right. And since you touched the bugs topic, can we avoid many issues by adopting TDD as a practice within the team?
Well, it will help avoid the obvious bugs, like just being able to start the app, these kind of things, or well, silly mistakes in calculations. These kind of bugs will be caught. So well, the many bugs that would happen if you wouldn't have any tests in place. However, it will not catch wrong assumptions that we've made. For that, we need something else. So that's where exploratory testing will come in place.
Yeah, by your description and some feedback I've heard from the community, it seems like TDD is really, really good for simple decoupled projects. But is it also suitable for complex projects as well? Does it bring value more than the investment in doing so when you have a really complex application? Even though complex application may be an issue by itself, but
Yeah, sure, it has value. It has value for any kind of application. I even try to apply it on infrastructure code because there are some calculations in infrastructure code, and applying infrastructure code takes a hell of a long time. So the feedback cycle is quite long. So you want to discover these things early. So it's really long. It's about accelerating feedback. And this is what TDD will bring you. It's like those fast executed unit tests that you execute all the time, and that will prevent you to introduce regressions. And this is helpful on any kind of application.
How do we define the scope of our test so it isn't really too much coupled with the implementation details, while at the same time it validates the actual the implementation detail.
So ideally, we test behavior to
Right.
avoid that we test implementation, or we test state. Like when I execute this, I'm expecting to find this state in the system. Or when I execute this, I'm expecting to receive this message. So it's really that. But oftentimes, usually with less experienced teams, you have very coupled tests with the implementation, and this is when you change the implementation, you have to change all the tests, and that is when teams start to stop applying TDD, because they are like, yeah, it doesn't work for us because we have too much maintenance, and this is a sign, this is a smell.
We have all these ways of generating the test automation code now, the test automation code generators for some existing code. And sometimes it's like it just validates exactly what you have. So it's highly coupled, I think, with the implementation details and not with the behavior part, right? So I think that sometimes people tend to forget that, okay, we can auto-generate test automation code, but it's validating what is already, what's there, right? Not what is expected, right?
I wasn't even aware there exist tools that generate tests. So I'm pretty old school. So I like to be in control of the
Good school,
tests.
good school.
So I'm a bit skeptical about anything that generates code, because I want to understand what the thing is doing, and I want to understand the tests, and why we are all writing the tests. And usually this is a good thing.
Yeah, you start by talking about behavior and validating behavior instead of other implementation details. And when you start writing those TDD tests, you start by validating the first behavior, but can you go a little bit deeper on it? So can you write like one layer of tests validating that behavior and then getting close to the unit test level? Or do you decompose a given feature into actual tests? So how do you approach this TDD?
Ideally, we have two cycles, two feedback cycles. So we have what we call an outer feedback cycle that is managed by acceptance test-driven development, where we write automated acceptance tests, also called functional tests, which are more tests that mimic the usage by a real user. Like we are going, if the application has user interface, we are going to exercise the user interface. If it has an API, we are going to exercise the API. So we will have a high level test that is really on a function level. And that test won't pass. And then we start growing the feature with unit tests until the test, that outer acceptance test pass. That's, so we have those two levels. And this is how, we usually work in the continuous delivery community.
How can testers help the developers during TDD?
Well, actually, testers are everywhere in this cycle. It starts by defining the requirements, coming up with good examples, because this is actually what we do, is implementing examples. This is what we do with the automated acceptance tests. But then when engineers start to implement the code, they could pair with a tester. And that the tester thinks about different corner cases that we need to think about, which is what TDD is really good at. It's to catch all the exceptions. Like we have the happy part, but then we have all the rest, and this is what we want to do with TDD. With automated acceptance test, we want to avoid to do all the corner cases. So we usually limit ourselves to a happy part, maybe one or two corner cases, but that's it. Yeah, and then afterwards, we have the exploratory testing where the testers are in the lead, and eventually software engineers can also pair to learn how do they do that. And so while everyone becomes somehow a bit of a tester, without being specialized, but
Yeah, you talked in the beginning that sometimes it's it's hard to convince the team to use TDD. It's more of giving them the experience and giving that haha moment. But how can we do that? Do you think that within a team, if one person experiments with it, is it enough, or should the entire team go for it and do bit by bit the experience together?
well, if already one person experiments with it, it's already a start. And hopefully they have a good experience with it, and then they can start telling to the rest, like, look, it's really great. We have value from this. You might try it. Let's pair, and I'll show you. And then eventually it can spread.
In your experience, Thierry, whenever you go to a team and you want to sell them the TDD idea, you do it by doing it together with the team, right? And then they start doing from there onwards, right?
Yeah. So usually I ask them, show me the code. And that's always the big surprise. And then you try to figure out something. And usually it requires a little refactoring, which is okay. Well, ideally you put in place some validation tests, but sometimes it's cumbersome to set up validation tests. And so if we can do an automated refactoring, we are kind of okay because it's automated, and so the risk of introducing a regression because of the refactoring is quite limited. And then we start.
Do you need to also sell that idea to the C-level stakeholders and to, let's say, the managers, to the team leads of the development teams?
It depends. So usually, they ask me because there is a quality problem, or it takes too long to deliver, which is usually related to quality problems. And then they are they are open to the idea. Sometimes I tend to ask them when they are like not really convinced. I like to ask, but is quality important to you? And then obviously they answer, of course quality is important. Well,
that's a tricky question. They will definitely say yes.
so here we go. But the thing I also tell them, like, once there is quality, speed will come. And your engineers will be way more comfortable. They will have less stress. And because of that, they will even produce better quality and deliver even faster. So it's a complete win. But it requires an initial investment. But this is a good investment because you have return later on.
If we don't adopt TDD, what are like the drawbacks?
Drawbacks is essentially in software design.
Right.
Usually the software design is complex. It's too coupled, and it's difficult to introduce change. Now, in the best case, there are some unit tests because, well, everyone is aware that unit test is a good thing to do. Yeah, sometimes it happens there are absolutely no unit tests, which is quite, well, happens more often than actually good. And they only have like something like end-to-end tests. This is the worst situation that we can have. And it's also difficult then to start introducing unit testing and test-driven development because the software is not prepared to do that. So it requires heavy refactoring, and this is a long journey. But that is okay, as long as we don't start trying to write unit tests, well, to catch up with unit testing, like everything needs to be tested at once. That won't work. So it needs to be an incremental approach. Like, okay, we are adding a new feature. Well, this feature we will do it TDD way. And when we are touching existing code, well, we'll try to change it so that we can add the necessary tests. It will take a bit longer, but hey, it's going slower now to go faster later.
Could there be like a risk of teams getting like stuck in endless TDD cycles, like people that just love refactoring code? Have you seen that, or it's not really like a thing that
Yeah, well, so this is where the automated acceptance tests are helpful. Once the automated acceptance test pass, well, the feature is done and we can deliver. Obviously, you can keep refactoring and gold plating, and this requires, well, some experience to accept that, well, good enough is okay. Don't need to be perfect.
Right. I think that's a really, really good point, because sometimes and speak also by myself, sometimes we get stuck in getting after perfection. It's easy to lose like ton of time, and sometimes we have to say, okay, this is good enough, we need to move forward. So if you see that there are like risks are lying only on TDD.
Oh yeah, only relying on TDD. Yeah, there is certainly a risk, and this was the error that the XP community made in the early 2000s. Oh, we don't need testers anymore. Well, no, you still need testers. Because they still had bugs, and these are all the faults of assumptions. And all the things we haven't thought about, like, oh, the users can use the application that way too. We hadn't expect that. So this is where well, the critical testing happens, like discovering these things. But this is not only well, this shouldn't be a gate, this way of testing. Like it's something that happens continuously, and it might be in a staging environment, but it should also happen in a production environment. Like, and we should also look at the logs and at the monitoring to discover usage patterns that we haven't expected.
Yeah, so we're kind of reaching the end of our questions, but I cannot leave without a few suggestions from you. So, do you have any preferred tool for TDD that you want to suggest, or any go-to framework that you think it's better suited for TDD approach, or it's just use what is best for you, the kind of advice?
Well, it kind of depends on the programming language that you use, what is available. So yeah, the XUnit frameworks, obviously, which exist for many languages. I like the fluent matches. So that allows you to write
That's very interesting.
assertions in fluent English. So I like that, but that is like mostly present in programming languages like JavaScript and Ruby. Um, Java also has that. Well, it was Handcrest that it was called, the library. So this is helpful. Yeah, that's for the unit tests.
And finally, Thierry, and for our listeners out there, for the millions of listeners that we have, for sure, um, for all of us that want to learn more about TDD and also exploratory testing, but especially TDD as that's the main topic. Any resources that you would like to recommend that you like to suggest to our listeners?
Yeah, so for TDD, a book that really helped me, well, two books that really helped me is TDD by Example from Kent Beck, and then the book Growing Object-Oriented Software Guided by Tests from Steve Freeman and Ned Price. So they introduced this concept of the double feedback cycle, which is reiterated in the continuous delivery book by Dave Farley, which is a big proponent of automated acceptance tests. Then about exploratory testing, well, I have been advised to read Explore It from Elisabeth Hendrickson. I haven't read it yet, sorry, but it seems to be the book for exploratory testing. Something that also helpful, I don't know if they still organize this, so there is this, these, oh god, so in Belgium, but it's around the world. There used to be every month a gathering where people trained exercising TDD, and it's a specific format. So you work in sessions of 45 minutes in pair, and it's always the same problem that is being implemented. And at the end of the 45 minutes, well, we throw away the code and we start all over again. And so it's based on the idea of like musicians that also need to rehearse. And well, we as engineers should also do that. Now it has a name, and I forgot the name. Code Retreat. That is the name.
Code retreat. Oh,
Yeah.
that's really, really interesting. I wasn't aware of it. I have to check that out.
Yeah. And every year there is a global day of Code Retreat. And so it's one day where it's happening all over the world.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you for being here with us, Thierry, and helping us understand more on how we can take advantage of TD and how to combine it with exploratory testing also. It was a pleasure. Thanks for your feedback.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.